Oh, hello. My name is Ruth Larajoni, and welcome to this week's episode of Dark Histories, Raw and Uncensored. As you might know, today we celebrate a boy who was born in England and went to Ireland to spread Christianity throughout Europe. We know this man to be St. Patrick. But aside from the special day, the four-leaf clovers, the leprechauns, and the potato recipes, Ireland has another side of history. Stories that link revolution and ghostly mysteries and mayhem. Some might not believe in such tales, but for those who have been so lucky to encounter them, it's such a treat. Let me start by taking you back to the 17th century, a time and a place of political outrage and religious blasphemy acted upon war and rebellion. It's a perfect time to take control and hold an immense property of power. This is Paranormal Activity in Irish Castle History. Ireland, a vast landscape filled with cultured and religious history. Great legends linger within the architecture of this country, and what better place to start than the castles? These castles are of Gothic origin, dating back to the Renaissance and medieval times. The haunted stories that have been documented from the past present important political and religious means found in scholarly novels later in time. Castles served as military tools during the times of war and, importantly, the Catholic Rebellion, a Catholic-Protestant war dating back in the early 1640s. Therefore, these fortresses establish a position of power. Starting in the southern east part of County Cork, Ireland, stood Ballymartyre Castle, owned by the Catholic-originated Fitzgerald family. Around 1638, the English author Henry Lovell decided to stay at the castle for 4 nights. While being accompanied by Richard Fitzgerald, the heir to the castle, and Sir Dunno McCarthy, a cousin to the family, strange things started to happen. At the first night, all 3 men were in their bedroom chambers, but then all of a sudden, they heard howling. Music started to play, and gaunt faces were seen at the windows. The second night, McCarthy decided to slip out for the night, supposedly on an important business. Lovell was left alone in the chamber when all of a sudden he heard horrendous cries throughout the corridors, and they happened to be the corridor servants being beaten. After that, Lovell was growing suspicious. Why all the fuss? Could the reasons behind these encounters be of McCarthy in order to unsettle local Protestants? This may be because in 1641 McCarthy began the Catholic Rebellion. During the first Catholic Rebellion, started by Earl of Desmond, Richard Fitzgerald's grandfather and the Earl were allies, fighting to rightfully vanquish Ballymartyre Castle after the grandfather's mother was hung from its walls. A little northeast of Cork lies County Carlow. This county holds Huntington Castle, also known as Clonagall Castle. David Burden Robertson, a descendant of the Esmond family, the owners of the castle in the 1600s, experienced either a dream or a ghostly illusion. When David was reading in the castle library, he soundly fell asleep. When he opened his eyes, the room had an unusual light to it. Then out of mid-air, 2 phantom figures appeared looking down upon him. As the faces became closer, David could see and feel himself being lifted, hovering over the couch from which he was lying on. He later on explained how it seemed like he had stopped time and how much he had an out-of-body experience. In the 14th century, the Druids, Celts who were in a way highly educated, believed in sacrificing humans to communicate to the pagan gods. Sometimes, when visitors gaze across the field behind the castle, they spot hooded figures walking into the woods, arriving to sacrifice. In the County Monaghan, Castle Leslie's ghosts are not there to harm, but just to visit, for their family history never ends. Miss Sam Leslie, a descendant of John Leslie who bought the castle in 1664, currently lives within the family walls. When Sam was reading in the library one day, the service hall bell started to ring. As she opened the door to the outside, no one was there. As Sam was in the kitchen preparing a meal, orange pits were thrown against the wall and the food mixer started running, and it even wasn't plugged in. Even though there was no one there, Sam could feel energy in the room. When guests come to stay at Leslie, they sleep in the red bedroom. Many of them say they wake from their slumber and see a soft, lighted man dressed in some sort of uniform looking through the drawers of the bedside table. One couple said that this man came over and shushed them, then disappeared. One night, another couple saw him approach the bed holding scrolled documents in his hand. As he smiled at them, he turned to depart, and they noticed a bloody bullet wound in the side of his head. Since Sam kept constantly hearing these stories over and over again, she was determined to find out who this man was and why he was looking for these papers. So she decided to search through all these documents in the castle to find what the ghost was looking for. And it turns out that this man's name was Norman Leslie, a World War I veteran and Sam's great uncle. On October 14th, 1914, Norman left to serve his country. Time passed, and while the gardener was outside, he spotted Norman on the outskirts of the property and ran to tell Norman's mother that her son has come home. Excited beyond joy, she quickly prepared a welcoming feast for him. The days passed, Norman did not come. Eventually, his mother received a letter confirming that her son was shot in the head and died in France. These telepathic images of Norman coming back home solved the mystery of the missing documents. Norman was coming back to warn the family that they needed to find the inheritance documents in order for the family to keep its castle, or else it would have been taken away from them. While looking through all the papers more than twice, Sam found what Norman was looking for. But not so friendly activity had occurred in this next castle. For within the walls of Lep Castle, nightmares of ghastly creatures and dangerous mischief has kept locals wary, but visitors attracted. In 1592, there were two brothers who lived in Lep, a bishop and a priest. Of course, the older brother was the one to inherit the home, which made the other very jealous. When the priest was practicing a ritual in the bloody chapel, the young bishop murdered his brother, spreading bloodshed all over the floor. When the bishop took over, he started to murder his prisoners who fought against him by bringing them to the prison room and throwing them down a machicolation, a hole in the floor with a spike planted on the bottom, so that they would land straight on it. This hole is also called a boulette, or a little place of forgetting. Those who managed to survive the spike died from agonizing starvation, since the kitchen was just below the cell. In the 19th to the 20th century, the remains of the bodies were dug out to be disposed. While pouring the remains into a wagon, one of the workers found a pocket watch with an engraving on the back dating to the 1840s. This odd occurrence makes people wonder if the oubliette was still in use at that time. In the early 1900s, the Darby family took over the estate. Mildred Darby was the mistress of Lep and was a fan of practicing magic. One night, her and her friend were playing with dark magic cards. Minutes after they started, their inanimate centerpiece went ballistic, as if there was a spirit inside trying to burst out and be set free. Shortly after that night, Mildred encountered it. She described this elemental creature as if it was a distorted and decaying lamb figure. Its odor was horrific, like rotting corpses. The creature was sheep-sized, had a gaunt human face. It had distorted black holes for eyes. Slob oozed from the mouth to the neck. Dark cavities covered the face. Its hair was black and gray. It had paws and sharp claws for hands, and sat on its hind legs. Its lower half was transparent. Some people believe it was seen as a reminder of all the bishop's departed prisoners sent to the oubliette. In the 1990s, Lep was bought by the Ryan family. One day, the family was renovating. Sean was on a ladder leaning against the outside wall. All of a sudden, the ladder started to toddle and became very unsteady. As if it was jerked from underneath, Sean fell to the ground and broke his kneecap. When he healed a year later, he was able to hoist some lumber and piles of stones by pulley, and the rope to the pulley broke, and he broke his ankle. Diving into the counties of Meath, Westmeath, and Cavan is Lough Shilin, one of Ireland's beautiful lakes. Overlooking Lough Shilin stands Ross Castle. There once lived a lord and his lady who owned the castle. They had to go on a trip, so they left their baby son with the nanny. Unfortunately, the baby died, leaving the nanny terrified. She desperately set out to find a replacement baby, and came upon a traveling family and explained her problem. Seeing that the baby might have a better future, the family gave up their infant, who became Richard Nugent, English leader of the landscape and the Black Baron. He was so cruel, he even hung an innocent beggar who was charged for stealing a loaf of bread. The Black Baron's charming daughter, Sabina, loved to spend her time at the shores of Shilin. During one of her leisurely walks, she meets Orwin, the son of the Irish O'Reillys and Nugent enemies. They fall in love and sail across the Shilin, but all was lost when a storm hit their boat, taking Orwin with it and leaving Sabina alone. Filled with unbearable despair, Sabina locked herself in the castle tower and died of starvation. People have said in the winter when the lake is iced over, they can spot a funeral procession slowly making their way across the ice. The black figures suddenly fall through the ice except for the priest, who just slowly disappears into thin air. The main suspicions that could answer these activities include Sabina's death in the tower and Orwin's death on the lake, the Black Baron himself, but also the death of the innocent baby that was replaced by the Black Baron. Is the funeral scene in regards to Orwin's death or the Baron's? If it's the Baron's, was his death caused by the perished little baby? Many questions are asked every time visitors tour the castles. Are these stories true? Did this really happen? Stories, myths, tales, however they are titled, history never tells a lie. Thanks for watching!